Central Postgame Show brought to you by Hot Shots, St. Louis's home for all the games, all the time since 1990. Find yours at hotshotsnet.com. Of course, we are here on STL Sports Central. All content here provided by DraftKings. The crown is yours. He's Matthew Rocchio. I'm Stefan Caray. Let's take a deep breath. What a day of baseball for the Cardinals. A day that, realistically, if things didn't go the right way in a few key situations, the Cardinals might have ended up losing the series against the Southsiders.
Yeah, they got away with one there. Different series against a different team. It's an L. It's an L in probably both those games and therefore the series. But you're playing the worst team in the AL and I guess, arguably the second worst team in Major League Baseball. And that helps you get through two games where, you could have easily lost. And there was a lot of mistakes, especially throughout that late game. Not just uncharacteristic professional mistakes, but extremely uncharacteristic Cardinal mistakes.
Yeah, there certainly were some Cardinal sins in this game, and one of them was the game-tying grand slam allowed by Kyle Leahy to Andrew Benintendi, a 91-mile-an-hour hanging slider at the top of the zone. I mean, that pitch was a batting practice for a guy like Benintendi, who's on a big contract with the White Sox to do exactly what he did. But before we really get into the nitty-gritty, that's the whole point of this show, is to kind of dive deep into these games. Why did things happen the way that they did? I feel like it's important to put out a disclaimer that we said before this series started, the goal was to sweep the White Sox. Anything less than that would have been a failure. They swept the White Sox. So everything else, does it not matter? Well, in my mind, at this point, you can kind of sweep it under the rug and measure it out to things didn't go perfectly, but the Cardinals took care of business. They swept the White Sox, and being 5 games above 500, now kind of neck and neck with the Brewers for second place again, you can forget a little bit more about some of the struggles they've had at the beginning of the month and turn focus to the Reds. But so many things that we can discuss. Game 1, a near loss. Michael A. Taylor, a 2-run home run off Steven Matz, who didn't look his sharpest. But then Wilson Contreras settles the score. Joel Pozo comes in and knocks home an RBI single. A very classic 2025 Cardinals win in Game 1. But then things went off the wayside in game number 2, and it felt oddly like that second game against the Royals, or maybe it was the first game against the Royals of that homestand. The Cardinals took a 7-2 lead and just blew it.
Yeah, and that's the disappointing part. Bernie Miklasz just did a great breakdown on STL Sports Central today in his video of how the Cardinals have weakened the entire integrity of the team because they've broken Ryan Helsley. And I think you see when you see the cracks in Helsley, it's just a trickle-down effect where now the entire bullpen is weaker. And that's honestly one thing. I don't know if we're going to have time to get into it today, Stefan, but that's something I was thinking about throughout this game, which is you got a pretty important series coming up now on the back end against a better team, and your bullpen has now been run ragged, put through the ringer over the last over the last day. And so now this is one of those things where, you beat a bad team, but beating a bad team might lead to you guys losing to much better teams because your bullpen is now even worse off than it was when you traveled to Chicago.
Yeah, let's discuss a little bit about this bullpen. One piece that has been added to this relief corps for the Cardinals that has looked amazing is Andre Granillo. I have not minced words about how I feel about Andre as a person, how I feel about him as a pitcher on this show, and he's tremendous in both aspects. To be able to come in and do what he did today, get the win in Game 1 and to get the save in Game 2, he's the second player in baseball history to get his first career save and his first career win on the same day. I mean, that's unbelievable. And to be able to do it in extra innings, protecting a 2-run lead, you have the middle part of the order coming up for the White Sox. All the pressure is on you as a young reliever who has yet to give up a run. I can't say enough about how well he's pitched. And at some point, you've got to make the decision. Let's throw him into the fire. Let's see what he can do with some leverage opportunities. Today, you really had no choice. You had to put him in. Everybody else was tired. Guys couldn't go. I think Granillo earned his stripes a little bit as one of the guys you can trust to take the ball in a high-risk scenario.
And you know what? To that point, there's been a lot of conversations about getting young players chances and the inability to get young players chances. Well, you just got a young player a chance, a guy who's proven himself in the minors, and he's gotten the chance, and now he's proven it, and you need to continue to give him those chances. And this is one thing the Cardinals, I don't think they're going to blow this one, mainly because their hand has been forced, but that's almost the bad side of this discussion, which is it's getting a little annoying that it feels like their hand has to be forced to make these kind of decisions, and it's still not a proactive thing. That's a conversation that I've been having over the last 2 years with Brooke and Randy, working with them on different shows. It's just the Cardinals have become reactive and not proactive, and that's what mediocre and that's what the mediocre teams in leagues across sports do. They react to things, they don't plan for things. And I love what Granillo's done, but the fact that he wasn't here until they had to make the move, and he wasn't put into a leverage situation until they had to, I think highlights the issues they're having with finding ways to get other players in similar situations.
Right, and you've seen the emergence of Riley O'Brien. He's pitched very well since being returned to the Cardinals and recalled back to the major league team. Granillo is one of those players that has strikeout stuff. I know he got his first career strikeout to close out the game, but you look at his minor league numbers, he's a swing and miss pitcher. He gets the ball on the ground, he's a swing and miss pitcher. You see the comment here from Bad Mike, the bullpen blew the win for McGreevy. Yes, it might be an oversimplification. I think McGreevy probably could have gone deeper in that game, but it's 6-1, 5 innings. He did his job, and I don't mind the decision to go to your bullpen and trust a guy to eat up 2 innings. They did that. Things started to unravel a little bit. A couple of plays didn't go your way, an infield hit. Then you just couldn't find the strike zone with Leahy. It was a game that the Cardinals in some ways looked like they were playing not to lose. And I think that they were more concerned about the upcoming stretch of games at home, rightfully so. All of them are within the NL Central with the Reds and the Cubs coming up, that you didn't really have a choice. You need to save some of your arms to play in those games, or else things could be a little bit more problematic. You control your own destiny this week at Busch Stadium. This is a huge opportunity to gain some ground. And if you don't play your cards right, things aren't going to go well.
Yeah, and I respect a team that's again, like I just said, I want them to have a plan. I want them to be thinking ahead of time. And that's why today's decision-making was a little bit odd, because I don't think they were able to successfully do that. And part of that's because players don't execute. And that's something we always have to be aware of, is drawing the line between a coach making a mistake and not having a plan, and players failing to execute. And, a coach can't have, plan D, C, F, G, and, how many backups do you expect them to have? So that was also problematic. And one of the reasons they were having that issue, to Nick Jensen's point, especially in that second game, a lot of pass balls. Pages was really struggling. That was something that conversation kind of really hit. The rubber kind of met the road, because we've all been talking about Pedro Pages, and the pitchers have been talking about how solid he is. And yes, he's been a boon to the lineup. But when he has a bad game behind the plate, it is outsized, and it really shows how much of a struggle that can be. And the numbers are real. Ivan Herrera has not thrown out a Steeler this year, and last year his numbers fell off a cliff. And so I'm not sure anything's going to change, but I do think it shows how thin things actually are, despite having a lot of players with a C next to their name on the roster.
Yeah, and you think about Ivan Herrera, a lot of the fans saying they need to get him in the lab, learning to catch during this offseason. My thought process on this is, if you do that, you're probably going to take a hit on him offensively, and I don't think that's worth it. I don't think that's worth it.
Really
that's just my opinion. If you get a 300-plus level producer with maybe a stronger lineup next year, who knows? He could be a 30 home run, 100 RBI guy, and I very much believe that. But before we get into our next point, a quick reminder that the Cards Central postgame show is brought to you by Hot Shots, St. Louis's home for all the games all the time since 1990. Find yours at hotshotsnet.com and keep hammering the likes. Make sure that you guys get involved in the conversation. Like, comment, subscribe. Give us your questions and concerns about the Cardinals. We're going to get to all of them here on the Cards Central postgame show. We're really excited to talk about how this doubleheader played out. One moment in this game that I think is important to put a magnifying glass on is Jose Barrero comes up, runners on second and third with 1 out. You don't go to Mason Wynn. And I know that the fans were ready to take out their torches and pitchforks on that certain decision. But what that tells me is Mason Wynn needed the rest. He must have been physically unable to go for a second game. They're trying to get him ready for this upcoming stretch where you're going to need him in virtually every day against the Reds and Cubs. But it was interesting to see a sacrifice bunt or suicide squeeze attempt in. I don't know if that's a lack of trust in Barrero to put the ball in play or to hit the ball in the air deep enough to get Gorman home. But the execution there, all the blame falls on Gorman. Yes, he got caught wandering at third base, but you got to get that bunt down. If he's up the line, you've got to get that bunt down. So I think the culpability rests with both of those guys.
Yeah, and I understand people are going to criticize Gorman, and he deserves a lot of criticism. I mean, for me, I've been beating the Gorman drum to a point where I apparently am trying to trade better players. That was taken out of context, I swear to God. But then I mean, the first game, Gorman's over 2 with 2 strikeouts, and then today he finally gets a hit. He finally works the walk as well in a big moment, and then he makes a huge mistake on the base path. It's just he can't win for losing with the guy. And I'm sure the Cardinals are sitting there tearing their hair out, because if he could just put together 2 solid months, it makes them have to make a decision, but it's a good decision to be forced to make. And yeah, that was just a rough day for Nolan Gorman on which I hoped it was going to be a bigger day for him, because he starts both games, and that was huge for him. Although neither one of them ended up being at third base, which I thought might be something. Although Nolan Arenado continues to make solid plays defensively, had some big RBIs today. Again, Bernie Miklasz doing great work on STL Sports Central, pointed out that he's slugging over 500 in the last 2 weeks. So maybe I'm completely wrong about Nolan Arenado. All I know is that I'm disappointed about Nolan Gorman after today, and I might have to finally jump off the bandwagon.
And I think that might be too premature. I think that he's hitting a lot better. He's controlling the strike zone a lot better. He did have an at-bat in game 1 where he struck out on 3 pitches, fastball. And that was a bit of a concern against a right-handed pitcher. Now, if you are a Cardinals fan, a couple things that you'd love to see. Alec Burleson, again, continues to heat up. He had an awful at-bat in that 10th inning, swinging at pitches well below the zone in the dirt. But at that point, who knew what the strike zone was with what was going on there in the later innings? That was certainly something that if you are a St. Louis fan, you would have liked to be amended by the home plate umpire in game.
Yeah, that Granillo call in the second game, I had as I usually do, I had the TV going, but I was listening to our good friends over at KMOX, and the 6th ball to Noda that walked him. Oh my God, the reaction from Ricky on that one was absolutely hysterical. It was a ridiculous call on that one, and I couldn't have put it better than he did on 11:20 today, because that was some weird calls. That one at the end of a very long day was highlighted in the tone of the broadcasters, and yeah, it was a weird day with the strike zone today.
Yeah, it was a longer day than it needed to be, but back to those home runs. Alec Burleson, an opposite field 3-run home run, hit it again about chin level. I mean, he's handling pitches that he shouldn't be able to get to at the top of the zone, and it just shows how quick his hands are to be able to get to those pitches. Nolan Arenado hit number 350, but not to be outdone by Lars Nootbaar. It's almost as if he was saving his home run swing for the biggest moment he possibly could. I know that they had already taken a 7-6 lead. Nolan Arenado drove in the run. Great managerial decision to bring in Jordan Walker with his speed, with Slater and right, not the strongest arm. But Nootbaar comes up after Arenado gets cut down at second, trying to stretch for 2. And he hits a line drive home run into the bullpen. This was tremendous. This was so good to see. And I firmly believe that Andre Granillo is put into a much more difficult situation, and things might go differently if it's a 1-run lead rather than a 2-run lead there in the bottom of the 10th.
Yeah, I mean, your entire mindset's different in that way. So Lars giving him that little bit of confidence. I mean, you just got your first career win. You're going for your first career save. I don't know. Maybe you're sitting there and thinking, I'm playing with all kinds of house money today. I got nothing. But it always is a little bit easier, I think, if you're a relief pitcher, to know I can let one by, and then I can still slow things down. And especially what he had to face in that final frame, I would expect he sweat just a tad bit less thanks to Lars Nootbaar cranking that one. And to your point, I mean, Lars, just think about that. Took the day off, got demoted from the leadoff, and then has a nail in the coffin home run from the 6 hole today? Or the 5 hole in game 2, excuse me. From the 5 hole, that's a monstrous monstrous hit for Lars Nootbaar. Loved everything about that. If he can get going again, doesn't have to be at the leadoff. If he can just get back to what he always is, 240, but he's always going to give you 140 to 160 more points on his OBP. So he's going to be a useful player. His OPS plus is going to tell you he's a 12 to 18% better player than everybody else in Major League Baseball. He's worth the money. He's worth the at bats. That's what Lars Nootbaar is going to be. He just needed to kind of get it, shake the rust off, knock it off a little bit. He did.
And a great time for him to knock that rust off. Maybe after this slump, he can go on a hot streak against the Reds and the Cubs. We got a whole lot more to talk about here on the Cards Central post-game show brought to you by Hot Shots. But all content here on STL Sports Central is provided by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Baseball season is officially underway, and it's time to step up to the plate with DraftKings Pick 6. Think of DraftKings Pick 6 as your fastball right down the middle. It's the easiest way to play for cash and take a shot at a big win. Just select 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. Pick 6 is available in most states, including California, Texas, Georgia, Missouri, and more. Cash in your baseball knowledge. New players get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly on just a $5 entry. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers to play $5. Get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
So let's talk a little bit about Andre Granillo and finish off our point about him. And I know that we've discussed him not necessarily ad nauseum here on this show, but we've certainly been advocates for him to be promoted to the Cardinals. I think the fans that were asking for this have been backed up by the level of play that he's shown in his first, 4 appearances with the club. But what makes it even crazier to me is that in that situation, up by 2, he really realistically recorded 4 outs and didn't allow the runner from second to move to third.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, that's insane. That is talk about a clutch moment for a rookie. Talk about getting thrown into the fire. Talk about, again, why you don't need to wait until the absolute worst clutch moment to put a rookie in, because, I mean, like you said, talk about throwing, in from the frying pan into the fire kind of situation for Granillo after game 1 and then into game 2. That's an insane day for him. You talked about it, right when he got called up, about his ability, the fact that he had a closer mentality in the minors. That's the kind of stuff you wanted to see from him, and he's already showing it. Love that.
It was great. We'll see how the lineup is constructed tomorrow. I wouldn't be suggesting that Nootbaar should be the leadoff hitter again, at least for a little bit, until he starts getting more hits consistently. Brendan Donovan had an ice cold day in game number 2. But looked great just a few days ago when he led off and had a 4-for-5 performance. So I think this is something that we can see. If you're the Cardinals, keep him up there. Let your best hitter continue to swing the bat well. And against the Reds, who knows? This is a team that has won 7 of their last 10 games. They've played tremendous baseball. They're 10-6 in the month of June. And they're sitting at 4th in the NL Central at 39-36. So the top 4 teams of the NL Central all have winning records. Pretty much all of them are either leading the division or in contention for a wild card spot. This is the NL Central that was kind of advertised, these young, exciting, unknown teams. And I think it's going to be a really fun finish to the 2025 season if the Cardinals can keep this rolling.
Yeah, earlier today on the morning show, someone was telling me that the NL Central is terrible and that competing in it doesn't mean anything. And my response to that was their record right now would have them second place in 2/3 of the AL divisions, and the competition in those top 4 teams is probably the second best in Major League Baseball this season. So I don't know if division records mean anything right now because none of the teams have really played each other. This is the second time, by the way, in history in a full season that the Cardinals have played a White Sox series before playing a Cubs series for the first time in history or in the season. Also, we got this earlier. This is why AI is stupid. What stat did you have to open up the show, Stefan?
Opened up the show about Andre Granillo?
Yeah, what was that a stat again?
Yeah, he's the second ever pitcher in Major League history to record his first win and his first save in the same day.
This is why you don't use AI, because you then come into our chat and you say he's the first player ever, and I looked up AI and found that, and you're Stefan there with the research telling you no, second one ever. Just wanted to smooth that thing out there so Wesley gets to go through life now with the correct answer to that trivia question.
Well, and in fairness to Wesley there, I didn't know that. I didn't really research it particularly hard. They just said it on the broadcast, and I know that the stat guy they have in there does his research extremely well. So I'm trusting my sources on that one. But if I could say that Andre Granillo was the first to ever do it, trust me, I would be at the front of the line to be able to make that happen. But if you're the Cardinals here, again, maybe this is a doomsday perspective. I know it's a long season, but if you lost one of those games against the White Sox, and in the fashion that they were potentially about to today, it would have been extremely deflating coming into this series against the Reds, who are a team that's very hungry, trying to continue to make their mark with a really good manager in the NL Central. Now you're 5 games up, and you can play loose. You turn to Andre Palante. You don't have necessarily the aces of the rotation for Cincinnati. You're not seeing Hunter Green. You will see Brady Singer in game 1, Wade Miley in game 2, blast from the past, and Andrew Abbott, who has been the best starter for the Reds, but a couple of guys that you've already seen once this season.
Yeah, I try not to get too caught up into single games. I'm honestly ever, there's moments, and you got to look for, as I refer to them, cracks in the concrete, and that's why, pieces that I already referred to, like Gurney talking about how Ryan Helsley's fastball has fallen apart. That's the kind of stuff that I care about in June. And the issue and for me, it's because I can quantify the fastball thing. I can't quantify what losing to the White Sox today would have done to the locker room, but that doesn't mean it's not material. I just can't quantify it. And so I don't like to analyze it, because I don't like to analyze things that I can't see and manipulate and look at myself.
Right.
Correct. That the mindset change. And I think we've seen it multiple times in this season with the Cardinals, the big ups and the big downs, and how the team responds to those moments. Usually it's a very positive thing. They win games late and things like that. That was the storyline throughout all of May, when they were winning all those one-run games. It went 13-3, I think, in May in one-run games. But now things start getting a little shaky, and you wonder, does the team have that resilience? Was that thing we all talked about, that everyone wrote about, that Bernie did pieces about and Derek did pieces about, Katie did a couple great pieces about, that resiliency, is it going to be real even in June? We're not even talking about what everyone, the dog days in August, but you got to keep seeing it every time. And right now they're in that point where they got to still get up. They got knocked down, they got to still get up, but at least, they didn't slip into the mud on, up in Chicago, which would have been a loss. And
right.
I'm not, again, try not to get too much on one game, but Ryan Helsley looked solid. Michael McGreevy looked good, but there are other parts of the bullpen cracking. You had an uneven game again from a lineup that isn't what we thought it was through the first month. I think that's just clear. It can be that in games, but it's never going to consistently be what it was to start off the season. So that's kind of where I stand in looking forward to this Red series. But if you get wins and you can start turning things around in the Central, all of a sudden you get back from the All-Star break and those standings seem really real. And that's where I'm probably under focusing on these kind of games coming up.
The way that I look at it is every win that you have against a bad team or a team that's struggling is a win that eliminates a loss earlier in the month. In my mind, they cancel each other out. This team was at 8 games above 500. They were at one point a game back of the Cubs. Now they're 6 games back of the Cubs. Maybe what are they, 5.5 now because of that win? So 5.5 back of the Cubs at this point in time. You're in a much better place than you were just 2 days ago. And if you had lost that game up 6-1, I think it would have been very difficult. But to your point, the phrase that they keep using is creating their own energy, or create your own energy. And that's what the Cardinals have been able to do. Kind of like in the Last Dance documentary with Michael Jordan, they would find ways to get themselves up and motivated to win games. And that's what this Cardinals team has found a way to do. Even when they gave up a 5 spot in the 8th inning, they found a way to pull themselves back up and say, you know what, we're going to go and win. Kyle Leahy, great question. I think the innings that we saw him in, the frequency with which we saw him pitching in the early parts of the season, starting to come back a little bit to hurt him. I don't think that there's an issue. Yes, the fastball velocity is down a bit, but this is a game of confidence. And if right now you aren't super confident, it's going to be difficult to make things happen. Now, coming into the game, he had right around a 3 ERA this month. So there have been some good performances by Kyle Leahy this month, but it's felt like in the big moments he's had his struggles.
Yes, he has. And listen, I can't really find any other reason. I don't really think we need another reason beyond when you overuse a pitcher, this is what's going to happen. Just look at the sad story that Kevin Segrist will never be able to play catch with his son. Matt Bowman will never be able to play catch because I think their arms fell off while they were pitching for the St. Louis Cardinals. And so this is what happens when you overuse middle relievers who are incredibly useful, but they're not machines. They're not, what is it, Tungsten Arm Johnson or whatever the hell.
Tungsten Arm O'Doyle.
Thank you, Tungsten Arm O'Doyle. We've seen so many middle relievers who are so good completely crack because of the usage from the Cardinals. And guys like Bowman and Segrist are much longer periods of time, I know, but still, you compact what Leahy had to do to the point where Brendan Schaefer here on STL Sports Central was calling him Kyle Every Day. And that's all you really need to know if you're kind of trying to figure out what's happening here. I'm sure somebody like Bernie will do a great dive in onto what's actually, the problem in the pitches. But I think we can all agree on what's led to the issue with the pitches.
Right. Absolutely. And this is not an indictment of Ollie Marmol or of the staff. What other choice have you had in a lot of moments? Kyle Leahy was your only shutdown reliever. Now the guys that have been shutting it down have struggled. Romero has looked better. O'Brien has looked better. Granillo has looked great. Maton has looked phenomenal. So that's 4 options you have, but they can't pitch every day. John King has had his struggles. Leahy has had his struggles. Helsley has certainly had his struggles. So there's been a bit of a shift. And if you are a baseball fan, you know that if there's one problem you want to have on a year-by-year basis, and not saying you have it every year, but if there's one problem you want to have to fix over another, it is the bullpen. Because the bullpen is an easier fix than having a bad starting rotation or having a bad lineup. You can replace bullpen pieces on a year-by-year basis. It's difficult to do that with starting pitching. It's even more difficult to do that with offense. Yeah,
it is. But to your point, at least you can acquire some of that relief pitching, and that makes things a little bit easier. And like I said, I opened up with this. If they get people hitting this log jam, maybe one way to get out of it is trading one of these guys for maybe it's a starting pitcher that becomes a bullpen guy. Maybe it's some kind of deal for a relief pitcher. I think that's going to be live as long as they're in contention for some kind of classic John Mozeliak move for a relief pitcher at the deadline. And I'd be completely okay with that. That's the kind of buy now that I think is kind of the ceiling for the Cardinals. And honestly, where else do you slot in a big move for this team? I know you could argue, well, I would get a better player at this position, but just combining what the roster is and knowing how the Cardinals operate, is there a spot where you can really see them go, we have to improve there, and we don't believe anybody else in our organization can improve that spot? I don't know if there's that many holes from the Cardinals perspective. I know the fans, if we asked them, could just, find holes on every spot in the roster almost, but I don't think the Cardinals do.
I agree. I think that's a really good way of putting it. And right now you're 5 games above 500. You're well within the division. You're within striking range. You haven't even really played against your division. You've played more interleague games than you have against teams in the NL Central. It almost feels like you've played more interleague games than you've played National League teams. But this is something that we've talked about all season long. If you're a Cardinals fan now, with a guy like Michael McGreevy, there are some interesting conversations that we have to be able to have. One of them is he the most valuable 27th man in Major League Baseball? I think the answer to that question right now is an absolute yes. Is he ready to be an everyday Major League starter, an every 5th day Major League starter? I think the answer is also yes. The real question is, will he be? There are a lot of paper moves that have to happen in order for McGreevy to make his way into a Redbirds uniform on a daily basis, but I think he's earned that at this point. And I think that you wouldn't see much objection from the front office and from the manager on that point It's just the moves that are necessary, the money that is flowing through certain players has not afforded McGreevy that opportunity.
Yeah, so I guess my question to you is, how do you get McGreevy in? I don't think a six-man rotation for the long haul is the answer. It screws with veteran pitchers, and that's what you have right now. Are you moving Andre Pallante? Are his struggles finally getting too far? Is it unfair to have a guy be your best pitcher in September of one year and then get moved to the bullpen in just June of next year when he's a young guy who's working through things? Or, how are you getting Michael McGreevy these starts?
Well, it depends on who the part of your future is, or who your future is in your mind within the starting rotation if you're the St. Louis Cardinals. If it is Quinn Matthews, Takeo Roby, Tink Hence, and then continuing on with Sonny Gray and McGreevy, then, what does it hurt to get him up here? But you have to also ask the question, what is the market for Andre Pallante right now? And it's certainly not as good as it was a month ago. It's certainly not as good as it probably would have been later in the season last year, past the trade deadline or during this offseason. You are riding with your guys and you are doing a full audit of this team. You're doing a full audit over 162. I'm interested in seeing what the trade deadline will bring. I'm sure there will be some very safe, conservative moves, and I don't mind that. I don't think that they have to have a home run trade or a home run signing or acquisition if you're the Cardinals. You just have to do something that helps the team for a little bit, but doesn't completely gut them for the future, because right now the future is extremely bright.
It is, and I'm with you. My entire mantra this post game just could have been pull the trigger on the plan. That could have been like my hypothesis going into this, because that's what I want to see them do. I want them. It makes sense that that's the plan. Quinn Matthews, Michael McGreevy. These aren't the youngest, prospects either. These aren't 21-year-old. These are 20. These are guys who are 23 years old already. And I don't know how material that is to baseball teams, because I have a feeling they just think, as long as you're good for the first 4 years before arbitration, you're cheap and we can win games with you. We don't really care how old you are at the end of those 4 years. But so maybe I'm looking into it too far. But still, it's time to give these guys chances. They're ready for it. They've proven they're ready for it. And in a case like Quinn Matthews, I know he doesn't have a ton of professional experience, but this is why you draft college guys, isn't it? Is so that they can have a quicker pathway from draft to majors. And I think Quinn Matthews is hitting all of it right now, other than a little bump in the road. And if he gets over that and has 2 or 3 good months of pitching, there's no reason he's not up here for a couple games in September, in my opinion. I don't know if the Cardinals agree, though.
Certainly, depending on where they are in the standings, too. Do you trust to throw him out in the fire in that? I think his stuff is good enough. It's played everywhere he's been. But to me, not to dive too much into the minor leagues after the Cardinals sweep the White Sox, there's more starting pitching depth in the organization than there's maybe ever been. And that might seem like a crazy point to make, but I remember being in Springfield the last couple of years and seeing 2 out of the 6 days, there would be a 26, 27-year-old starter that was just there for organizational depth. That's not really happening at AA and above. You have starters that are legitimate starters. You have Henderson, you have Hansel Rincon, you have Quinn Matthews, you have Takeo Roby, you have Tink Hence. You have Sem Robertson, you have Drew Rom, you have these guys, even though they're still injured, that are fixtures in this organization that aren't like 28-year-old guys that are trying to prove themselves. So you have some options moving forward, and they're in a really good place in that department, in my opinion. It could be a whole heck of a lot worse. You could be the Orioles and have no starting pitching depth at the major or minor league levels. So, we'll see how they play it. But to be able to gut out 2 wins against the White Sox, yes, I know they're a struggling team, but that's a pretty good struggling team. That's not the White Sox of last year. That's a team that is on the rise and on the horizon of being a very talented group of guys over the next few years.
For me, their pitching is good, and that's why I'm not going to react too badly to the offense not having and again, we're going to say the offense didn't have a great series when they scored, what is it going to be, 25 runs in 3 games? But it just, there was some really ugly at-bats from young players, and there were huge gaps in games where you kind of let the White Sox get back into it today, and that's problematic. You want to see games like Game 1 where you put your foot on their necks. So the pitching from the Sox is much, much better than their offense. And so I'm going to focus on that. McGreevy had a good game, but I just don't know if I can completely. I don't know how much the Cardinals are going to take away McGreevy mowing down such a bad lineup, or any of these pitchers mowing down this terrible lineup. Again, you have to beat the teams in front of you. And you said it earlier, you have a big series coming up. I'm going to focus a little bit more on those singular games if I'm going to have to pick singular games. But again, this is the team that's there. You beat them, and that's what you're going to have to keep doing. For a long time there, I remember I've covered a lot of Cardinals games and Cardinals seasons where they lose constantly to bad teams. So at least it's not that.
No, it's certainly not that. And I think that the intangibles for McGreevy are what jumps out to me, is that his ability after giving up a solo home run to sit down 7 in a row, that's something that a veteran starter does. The sinker looked good. The sweeper looked good. His ability to execute 76 pitches through 5 innings, he could have gone deeper into the game. He didn't have to. I mean, would you have liked him to in hindsight? That way you could have saved your bullpen a little bit more? Probably. But for the moment, up 6-1, you trusted McGreevy. 5 innings was going to be enough. Your bullpen could have taken you the rest of the way. Now, before we call it a night, the series against the Reds are 3 starting pitching matchups. Friday, Brady Singer versus Andre Palante. That's going to be a good matchup. Both guys with ERAs in the 4s. Wade Miley versus Sonny Gray. Actually, a fortunate break for the Cardinals to get Sonny Gray in there in game number 2. And then Miles Michaelis against Andrew Abbott. That's a bit of a mismatch on Sunday for the Cardinals. I think that after last homestand, after you lost 2 of the 3 series you played at home against the Royals and the Blue Jays, this is one where you really need to try and win both series and continue to build ground, especially against the Cubs, right? You hope that they struggle against the Mariners at Wrigley Field, but you can't overlook the Reds. It's not like the Reds are 10 games under 500 like they usually are at this point in the season. They are a team that can really come out and beat you. So they're going to keep you on your toes.
Yes, and obviously the Cubs ones are bigger for me because there's a little bit of fraud watch on both of these teams relative to where they are, and the chance for both of them to expose each other, or either one to expose the other one, because the Cubs have played such a light schedule. Now they had some convincing wins over some good teams over the last 2 weeks. They've also had some bad wins against bad teams. But the Cardinals have hit their little bump. So I'm excited for that series. My focus on the Reds is I'm worried that, as we were talking about with the 6 starters earlier, I'm really worried about game 2 because Sonny Gray got knocked off his schedule. And I hate Sonny Gray hates getting knocked off his schedule. And Sonny Gray literally was his last start where he got hit and he had that really weird postgame. Was that 2 starts ago?
I think it was 2 starts.
It was 2 starts. Yeah. I think he stabilized himself since then. But anyway, you know that Sonny can have those games randomly where he's going to tell us in the postgame that he just didn't feel like he had it. And it seems like those games are combined sometimes with, he was on 7 days rest instead of his usual, or he had 8. And that's going to be one of these situations. So I'm already a little bit nervous about the Sonny Gray game. And this team's not good enough for people to be nervous about your number 1 starters games. But that's why, driving down to a completely different point, I stay away from 6 starters. Do not screw with Sonny Gray. Keep him to 6 1/3. Make sure he has plenty of nice soft jerseys ready for July. Get him a fan. I don't know if like a portable AC unit, something to keep him chilly. Just anything they can do to make sure that Sonny Gray can do what he's doing in May, in October. I don't know what they have to do to get him there, but that should be a high priority for this team if they care about winning this season.
Well, I think you put it best. There's not a whole lot more we can talk about. The Cardinals sweep the White Sox in the South Side, now 5 games above 500. They will welcome the Reds, the Cubs, to baseball heaven in the upcoming days. It's going to be a whole lot of fun to watch. Be sure to tune in. We will have all the coverage here for you on STL Sports Central. All content here is provided by DraftKings. The crown is yours. This is the Card Central post-game show, which is brought to you by Hot Shots. For Matthew Rocchio, I'm Stefan Caray. Thanks to everybody who joined us here on a great Thursday evening. The Cardinals are victorious. Let's hope that can continue over the next few days.